How many AAPI clients do you serve? What is your biggest challenge in helping this population? In my kind of community service setting, private practice, I see a caseload of about 5 or 6. Some of them are individuals, some of them are parents and kids, and some of them are just the kids. So there's like a broad spectrum, even within like my small caseload. And I think the challenges that come up are different based on why they're coming in. If you're talking about the Asian population in general, I think that one of the issues that I have that kind of is recurring is that there's not a whole lot of consistency, I should say. I think a lot of times they feel that they made improvements, and then once they feel that they make improvements, they stop coming. And so consistency is often a big issue. It's not a priority for them, so oftentimes I'll have people cancel because of something or other that comes up, and then after canceling a few times, they just kind of don't show up anymore. I think that's normal in kind of private practice settings, but I think more so with AAPI, or specifically the ones that I work with, the way that I generally do things is I try to do symptom management first, and then move into like deeper stuff. But usually by the time I'm done with like the symptom management stuff, they feel good enough to where they're like, oh yeah, okay, and then it just kind of falls to the wayside until something comes up again, and then they're back in my office. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is to be able to actually like not just work through the symptoms, but to be able to work all the way through the problem, and then addressing like the underlying things, so that they don't necessarily have to come back once there's another crisis or something that pops up. Is it easier or harder to deal with patients with an Asian background, as you might be able to relate to them? So I personally think that it's easier for me to relate to people who are Asian, people who come from Asian backgrounds, because there's kind of that connection that we have, kind of shared culture, shared understanding that I don't necessarily, or that they don't necessarily have to explain to me. Granted, a good culturally competent therapist is always going to clarify. You don't make assumptions about what you feel like those connections might be. But it is easier once you develop that connection, because there are kind of known cultural things that you can kind of hop off on, and it makes for great conversations, you know? Like, so let's go with like a really blatant stereotype, right? Like, say that I have a lawyer walk into my office and they want services, and I'm like, oh yeah, and they make some jokes about like them being, like their parents making them be a lawyer, right? But then you can kind of gauge how they respond to that. So they might say that, oh no, it had nothing to do with my parents actually, and then that's actually a great segue into a really good conversation that you could have with your client to get to know them better and to understand them better. But having that cultural piece allows for a little bit of an icebreaker, you know? So yeah, I think it's a little bit easier to work with people who are similar to me culturally, so Asians.